Got a ton of parts here. Made some progress since last time. Pretty close to finally putting all this together. We'll get back to this in a second. I'm going to show you. First off, I got everything wrapped with fiberglass heat shielding back there and got the gold reflective tape. I don't want anything melting from the turbo. I actually had my wideband O2 sensors were already melting together, so I fixed all that and reloomed it and tucked it up further out of the way because I don't want any of that stuff melting. So that should be pretty good and taken care of. Let's see, I got my intercooler done. So you can get a good look at that. Got everything painted. Got everything tucked up. I may go back later and actually weld in some end pieces there. I've got those in with riv nuts, and I don't know, it looks okay. I'll probably paint them black to match everything and not stand out so much, but alright, there's that. And over here, here is the fresh air inlet I have. I used to have it right here, and that went up to the cone air filter when I had the supercharger, and it just would, force feed some fresh air up in there. So, but it couldn't fit here because the pipe for the intercooler got in the way, so I had to move it over. Well, there's barely enough room to put it here, and what that does, I attach this tube, 2.5 inch like dryer duct. I bought a whole lot more over there. Don't know if I'll need it or not yet. I'll need some, but not that much. But that's going to come through up through the fender well. I've already made the holes. Let's see, for the intercooler and that breather pipe I'm putting in. And up here, let's see, the intercooler cold side is going to come through here up into the intake manifold, and here's where that breather tube is going to be. It's going to have that piece down there, and I'm going to get some more out of that box and come out of here, and it's going to be blowing onto the turbo, give it some fresh air and some cooling. So there's that. And this long pipe here, that's besides the coupler that goes on that end, that's the full intercooler hot side over here. Haven't finished it yet, but it's close. That's the cold side, minus the coupler here that's on the intercooler. Comes up, and this curves, and this goes through the fender well. And I'll have to get probably a little bit more of my aluminum piping and join to the blow-off valve. And that's a real HKS, SQV, whatever, but I've got the same thing on my Mazda. I love how those things sound. And this is actually, I'll get it off without dropping it, a stainless adapter. Normally people probably use aluminum, but since that hose, I was going to use an aluminum pipe there, but it wouldn't work. So that's a 2.5 to 3 inch pipe to the intake manifold, and I was going to put the methanol in that with the aluminum one, but I decided to do this instead. I got this stainless pipe, and I can weld it, which I use my Harbor Freight titanium welder. It does real good. And I have these 1/8 NPT bungs. I don't know if I want to weld one or two. I could cap one off. I don't know how many nozzles I want to run. I may do both, but put them up here, and that'll be the methanol for the Anyway, the methanol injection port. And then from there, that's the cold side blow-off valve, another little short piece, and then it'll connect into the intake manifold. Here I have a Grimspeed boost controller. This is the Radium Engineering rising rate fuel pressure regulator, and you need that running boost because when you run boost through your intake manifold, it puts a negative pressure on the injectors, less fuel, and you have this, you get your full fuel rate. And this is the radium fuel pulse dampener that you need to get a solid tune with the Jeep. Something about the pulse width modulation or something is off. And actually the later model 4-liter factory fuel rails, if you look at them, some of them I think actually come with a fuel pulse dampener built in. I think they're prone to leaking or whatever. But anyway, these look like real nice units. And this is the faster fuel rail that I've modified a little bit. I've taken the Schrader valve out of the pressure port there because that's going to be my extra fueling to the port I welded on the intake manifold. My 7th injector, it's gonna have a hose from right here to about right here. And on this came with it's a 5/16 fuel feed. I cut it out, I cut it off, drilled it out, and welded this 6 AN fuel feed because my fuel lines, at least half of my fuel lines for now anyway, are going to be 6 AN, and I wanted to go ahead and have it all the way to this fuel rail, and I welded that with my spool gun and painted it and all that, so be using that. This is the turbo manifold that I've wrapped. It's about the best I could. It's hard to get over the T3 flange there, but it's okay. Got to block all that, as much heat as possible. And I was planning on routing the wastegate to back into the exhaust, but for now I'm just going to dump it in front of the front axle. I got the tile, I think 38 millimeter wastegate, and that's just the dump tube. Be shooting some flames out of that probably. But yeah, I could have done this differently. I would show you how this would look on the engine, but I don't know. I just had it on and off test fit and stuff, but I'll get that in the next video. But I think because of my motor mounts, I've got the Brown Dog motor mounts to give the engine a lot more support. This valve can't attach directly here, and I think if I didn't have those mounts, without using this adapter that I made, I think the wastegate could fit here directly on to the manifold, and it would be perfect. I think this pipe, instead of doing it out the bottom, it would be facing this way, and you could bring it behind, like kind of underneath the pipe, close to the block, and tie into the turbo discharge, and it would be perfectly joined back into the system. But since I've got those motor mounts, that just won't work. So I'm just going to dump it out for now. And I don't know, I was thinking about later I could route it back a long way back over the axle into the exhaust, but I'm just going to dump it out for now. The turbo, the filter, you'll see that big hole on it. Had to cut that in there because it's so close to the motor mount that it contacts that. A bolt does anyway, bolt head. So this is a bell mouth I found to go in there, and there's some heavy stainless. The screen to be more like a filter, and so yeah, it should filter out anything, you know, about as big as sand or larger. If any dust and stuff will get through probably, but. And with this port I put on there, that I should be able to reuse the factory charcoal canister evap system. I just wanted to be able to reuse that. Got a turbo blanket, block more heat. I have port matched the rim flex gasket on the intake side. Exhaust side's not necessary because the ports on the gasket are bigger than the outlets of the head anyway. So oil feed, I've tested it and bent one end a little bit to clearance the turbo. And lastly, here's the intake manifold that I've done some work on. Yeah, I went a little overkill with the spool gun to weld that 7th injector port on there, but that's where the extra fuel is going to go. It's going to shoot directly into the intake plenum. I mean, it's going to be just shooting straight in there. This is a F&B throttle body that I've had for a while. It's a 68 millimeter. I've adjusted it a little bit since I had it out. Hopefully it'll help idle a little bit or something. Set that back on there. With these ports, let's see. Yeah, I think it was this one. Had one of these breather nipples hanging out of it, and I drilled it out, pulled it out as much as I could, drilled it out with a 1/4 MPT tap, so I can put whatever I want. I want to have the factory temperature sensor in one, have my manifold, my methanol temperature sensor in one, and then the other one on my vacuum stuff with the big tree fitting thing I have. It's like a triple split on there. And then over here there were 2 more nipples out of here, and I drilled both of those out, 1/4 MPT, so I'll be able to put whatever fittings I want. They were little bitty. This one I kept because that's where the brake booster goes to. So yeah, that's about it. Tomorrow I'm gonna start throwing all this in there, and hopefully within the next 2 weeks, hopefully by the end of this month, I'll have this thing running. I still have to make the fuel lines, which shouldn't be too bad, and I'm going to weld a couple more exhaust hangers on there. But the next video that I have should be of me priming the turbo to make sure the oil's getting through it, and then shortly after that, hopefully will be a running video. So stay tuned.